Country music loves its fences, but friendship jumps them for sport. Nashville was built on dusty chords and Sunday morning values, yet its most unforgettable stories begin the instant that neat postcard tears. Tonight we're prying open 15 brain-twisting bonds and lining them up like neon pins in an intergalactic bowling alley. Every chapter hurls a fresh ball, splinters more genre walls, and sends disbelief skittering across the dance floor. We'll tail Johnny Cash as he kidnaps Bob Dylan for a rebel duet, inhale secondhand smoke with Willie and Snoop, watch rhinestones trade punches with Rocky Balboa, and hear a theoretical physicist tip his hat to a weather-beaten songwriter. Buckle up, hit subscribe if you dare, and step into the weirdest jukebox on earth. Johnny Cash spent life hunting borders to break, so of course he dragged Bob Dylan into a Nashville studio during the frost-slicked winter of 1969. Columbia's room felt like a cosmic prank. Cowboy boots beside Beatle boots, June Carter passing steaming coffee while Dylan scribbled last-minute verse tweaks. They cut more than a dozen tracks in 2 feverish days, laughing whenever the magnetic tape snarled because imperfection felt honest. Purists panicked. Was Dylan betraying folk or Cash deserting country? Cash ignored them, booked Dylan on the debut of the Johnny Cash Show, and declared that country music had room for everybody. Columbia shelved half the tapes, bootleg hunters still chase a mythical, careless love. When Cash died, Dylan called him the North Star for anyone refusing to color inside lines. That compass still points due rebel. If Cash and Dylan cracked the gate, Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg stomp-kicked it into cosmic confetti. Amsterdam, 2008, Queen's Day, orange banners fluttering above canals, bicyclists dodging tourists, and 2 legends swapping rolling tips outside a coffee shop older than the United States. Willie, then 75, brought a duffel of curated greenery labeled by potency. Snoop assumed he could hang. Hours later, he surrendered on Dutch cobblestones, dubbing Willie the only man ever to outsmoke the Dogg. Their duet, My Medicine, puzzled radio programmers but united tailgates and block parties. A rumored 2025 album, Highways and High Times, may never drop. The friendship already proves generations can handshake across a haze of shared philosophy. Freedom, rhythm, and laughter louder than any rulebook. Dolly Parton fashions melodies, Sylvester Stallone fashions uppercuts. Their collision arrived with 1983's Rhinestone, when Dolly vowed to turn a New York cabbie into a bona fide country crooner and insisted Stallone play the part. On set, she appeared with glitter-dusted lattes. He lugged free weights and a dog-eared notebook of punch-up jokes. She coached nasal vowels, he coached footwork. The film bombed harder than a tumbleweed at high tide, but decades later, Dolly still keeps his sequined suit for emergencies. And Stallone calls her his fairy god country mother. Sometimes magic looks like a misprint until the spotlight hits. Loretta Lynn wrote her first songs on a $5 guitar. Jack White built amplifiers from thrift store speakers wired with stubborn hope. When he offered to produce Van Leer Rose in 2004, executives scoffed. What could a garage rock anarchist teach the coal miner's daughter? The answer was everything about fearless reinvention. The album snagged Grammys and forged a tender friendship. Jack now guards one of Loretta's stage jackets in a climate-controlled vault. She once promised to haunt him if he sold it. Pilgrims still drive to her ranch, swear they hear ghost chords, and learn that authenticity recognizes itself in any octave. Smooth met smoother when Lionel Richie phoned Kenny Rogers mid-shave in 1980. Richie waited, perched on a hotel bathtub, brainstorming lyrics that became Lady. The single ruled radio for months and sparked a lifelong brotherhood. Lionel, the honorary uncle who quotes scripture in velvet. Kenny, the rib-smoking mentor, sprinkling poker advice between chorus tweaks. During a 2021 Grammys tribute, Richie paused mid-song, wiped tears, and reminded the world that sometimes the softest voices break the hardest hearts. Silk crashed into gravel when George Jones, Prince of Heartache, found Dennis Hopper loitering on a Nashville bus in 1978. Hopper carried avant-garde poetry. Jones replied with bootleg drinking songs and a half-empty jug of corn liquor. They vanished for 48 hours, resurfaced at a charity softball game wearing each other's jackets and grinning like outlaw raccoons. Hopper later confessed that Jones's voice cracked open my skull and leaked color onto the film reel. For one brief, dazzling spell, the Grand Ole Opry and Easy Rider shared a backstage pass in the same unforgettable burn. Rebels recognized the blaze inside each other. Hank Williams Jr. swapped hats with Kid Rock, released Redneck Paradise, and joked that Kid was him before espresso. Across the Atlantic, Merle Haggard and Keith Richards jammed until sunrise on a tour bus littered with tequila bottles and homemade wine. Richards toasted Merle as the realest cat ever to bend a string, and Merle fired back, "You make a broken amp sound like Buckingham Palace. Rebellion isn't branding, it's a GPS coordinate etched in bone that guides kindred spirits home." If clothes could gossip, Porter Wagner's rhinestones and James Brown's capes would still be whispering across state lines. They met on a 1972 television special, swapped tailoring secrets, and phoned each other about sweat-proof satin until Brown's final curtain. Meanwhile, Adrenaline stitched a separate fraternity between Charlie Daniels and Ted Nugent. Fiddle solos, dueling chainsaw riffs, rebel yells uniting camouflage and cowboy hats beneath the same 4th of July fireworks. Glenn Campbell and Alice Cooper proved that mayhem can golf. Picture pastel knits hugging shock rock leather as they chase birdies at dawn, trade punchlines about mascara runoff, and bet charity dollars on impossible chip shots. Chemistry chooses its own dress code and seldom asks permission. Waylon Jennings met Muhammad Ali at a Houston gala crackling with spotlights and cigar smoke. Ali threatened to knock the country out of you, so Waylon handed him a custom ebony guitar etched with a boxing glove rosette. They invented a duet of fists and frets. Ali shadowboxed in rhythm while Waylon strummed defiant chords. Years later, when Parkinson's dulled Ali's roar, Jennings filled the hush with gentle riffs that sounded like prayer. Tammy Wynette and Burt Reynolds bonded over rescue dogs, divorce scars, and a mutual vow never to monetize porch swing privacy. After Burt's passing in 2018, a Nashville shelter received a mammoth anonymous donation labeled TW for the dogs and the dreamer. In a town famous for spectacle, their quiet kindness rings loudest. Reba McEntire and Whoopi Goldberg met on the 1994 set of The Little Rascals, where barbecue sauce and one-liners flowed. They now trade hot sauce challenges, keep a shared spreadsheet tracking eyebrow-raising charities, and battle annually for ugliest live television Christmas sweater, proof that laughter bulldozes culture fences faster than any bulldozer. Our last stop pairs Kris Kristofferson with Stephen Hawking. They met backstage in 1986, swapped William Blake quotes, and began letters where Hawking mused on singularities while Kris answered with verses about lonely highways. Hawking typed, "Your songs reach places equations cannot," and Kris framed the note beside a battered harmonica. When Hawking departed this plane, Kris whispered, "Safe journey, Professor," into a dim Austin stage, and somewhere a galaxy applauded. Now, because statistics matter to some of you left-brain listeners, let's run through the tiny backstage details that make these alliances more than tabloid curiosities. Johnny and Bob didn't just share microphones, they swapped boots. Dylan's size 8 suede Chelseas pinched Cash's toes, and Cash's rattlesnake leather size 11 clomped around Dylan's ankles like overturned canoes. But they laughed so hard at the mirror image that June Carter snapped a Polaroid, which still hangs in the Cash farmhouse mudroom. Willie and Snoop once challenged each other to a silent film marathon in Willie's tour bus. They made it halfway through the general before realizing both had fallen asleep with identical smirks. Dolly taught Stallone to yodel between bench press sets, and for 10 surreal minutes, Rocky sounded like the Alps. Loretta mailed Jack a jar of coal dust from Butcher Hollow. He keeps it on a studio shelf beside vintage fuzz pedals as a reminder that distortion was born in the mines. Lionel and Kenny once crashed a Vegas wedding, rewrote the recessional on cocktail napkins, and performed it in the lobby for tips they immediately donated to the happy couple's honeymoon fund. George Jones signed Hopper's motorcycle helmet, then borrowed that same helmet to ride a lawnmower down Lower Broadway at dawn, because Nashville traffic was too civilized. Hank Jr. caught Kid Rock sneaking hot Cheetos into Hank's deer blind. The resulting spice-induced coughing fit spooked every buck in 3 counties. Merle and Keith shared a single harmonica on a flight from LA to London, taking turns riffing into air sickness bags because the seatbelt sign never went off. Porter labeled Brown's first rhinestone suit Capezilla in glitter pen. Brown retaliated by sewing a tiny cape onto Porter's lapel during a live commercial break. Charlie Daniels autographed Ted Nugent's hunting license with a Sharpie shaped like a miniature fiddle bow. Ted mounted the pen next to a mounted boar. Glenn convinced Alice to trade eyeliner brands for a week. Glenn's subtle pencil made Cooper look like a bewildered meerkat, while Alice's jet black war paint turned Campbell into an accidental glam icon on a Branson stage. Waylon slipped Ali a handwritten set list before a charity bout. Ali returned it signed, "Float like Loretta, sting like Loretta," insisting the coal miner's daughter was tougher than both of them. Tammy knit Burt's dog a sweater shaped like a sheriff's vest. Burt flexed so proudly beside the mutt that paparazzi thought a TV pilot was filming. Reba dared Whoopi to eat a whole habanero live on The View. Whoopi swallowed, fanned her tongue with a greeting card, and announced a new charity called Tongues on Fire that raised thousands for literacy. Finally, Chris played chess with Hawking via fax machine in the early 90s. Hawking's prediction algorithm beat Chris in 17 moves, and the physicist suggested adding a tempo marking, moderato, to Chris's next ballad. These smallest, silliest moments are the mortar inside the towering myths. Before we dim the lights, let's pump the brakes and rewind through the ripples these pairings sent rolling across culture. First up, Cash and Dylan's unholy summit didn't just break genre, they rewired radio programming. Within a year, stations that once parked folk, country, and rock in separate corrals launched progressive country blocks where Grateful Dead bootlegs sat next to Ernest Tubb. Historians later traced the entire Americana movement to the 2 voices sharing one microphone. Cash's baritone made Dylan's prophecy feel like scripture. Dylan's surreal verbs made Cash's ballads feel like literature. Every modern singer-songwriter chasing credibility owes Sessions a check of gratitude. Nelson and Snoop's haze-haloed handshake carved a different kind of trail. Weed activists quote their joint interviews the way preachers quote parables. When Colorado legalized recreational cannabis in 2012, a Denver billboard ran the duo's likeness above the slogan, "Roll with Unity." Tourism officials credited the ad with a measurable spike in music festival ticket sales. Meanwhile, Dolly and Stallone's Glitter Meets Grit experiment birthed a micro-genre on YouTube, Rhinestone Core. Thousands of Gen Z creators upload mashups of hair metal riffs and Appalachian clawhammer banjo, all because one Tennessee songbird decided a Philly boxer should sing in sequence. Cultural collisions create aftershocks long after box office receipts quit rattling. The shockwaves weren't always musical. When Jack White and Loretta Lynn topped the Billboard charts, home improvement stores reported a curious uptick in sales of plywood and vintage wallpaper, DIY studio nerds replicating the album's crunchy echo chamber. Likewise, Lionel and Kenny's Vegas wedding crash spawned an industry of surprise serenade packages where professional crooners hijack receptions with custom ballads. Even George Jones and Dennis Hopper's whiskey-stained escapade yielded unintended charity. A Nashville nonprofit auctioned that lawnmower helmet for 50 grand and built a sober living wing in Jones's honor. Sometimes chaos seeds compassion. Fashion felt the tremors too. After Porter and James swapped sparkle secrets, rhinestone tailors in Nashville and Augusta reported record orders for men's stage capes. The trend trickled into streetwear. Hip-hop dancers rocking Porter-style wagon wheel embroidery beside James Brown split-knee trousers. We call it Bling Billy chic now, but its DNA traces back to 2 showmen trading fabric swatches under studio lights. And remember Glenn and Alice's eyeliner exchange? Cosmetic brands noticed. Within a quarter, Midnight Lineman Black Pencil hit drugstores nationwide, marketed to golfers with a glam side. It sold out by Father's Day. Even academia joined the party. A sociology symposium at the University of Texas once devoted an entire weekend to Waylon and Ali, examining how sports and songcraft blend into narrative myth. Keynote speaker Layla Ali concluded by strumming Waylon's old guitar and reciting her father's poetry. Another panel dissected Tammy and Burt's porch swing privacy, arguing that radical vulnerability hides in plain sight behind Hollywood smiles. The conference proceedings, published as Twine and Gloves, are now required reading in pop culture courses from Boston to Barcelona. When scholars start footnoting fiddle solos, you know the walls are truly down. So the lesson isn't merely that opposites attract, it's that collisions create ecosystems. One unlikely friendship births a soundtrack, a fashion wave, a charity grant, a graduate thesis, and a million playlists. Your collaboration across cubicles, classrooms, or comment threads could be the pebble that starts an avalanche creativity. Plant it, water it, watch it sprawl. Genres are maps, friendships are wildfires. Strike one match. Friendship, like a great chorus, repeats with variations. Sometimes it modulates into melancholy, as when Ali's swift footwork slowed and Waylon's guitar filled the hush. Sometimes it crescendos, like Kenny standing side stage while Lionel belts Lady before 50,000 glowing phone screens. Sometimes it fades into myth, like Hopper's claim that George Jones taught him to yodel at sunrise. A story impossible to verify, yet too perfect to doubt. Not every pairing survives the decades. Porter grieved when Brown's funk furnace went silent. Brown's estate sent Porter a floral arrangement shaped like a star. Loretta sobbed backstage after Jack smashed a guitar in concert, fearing the ghost in its wood felt pain. Dolly and Stallone text less these days, but he still calls every Christmas to growl, "Yo, angel of the Appalachians," and she replies, "Yo yourself, Italian stallion." What about us, the listeners? We are stowaways riding shotgun on these improbable road trips. Every song born of cross-pollination grants permission to wander wider playlists, to picnic on grassy hills between radio towers. Next time your algorithm insists you stay inside a comfort bubble, remember Willie handing Snoop a vaporizer shaped like a church key and press shuffle with reckless courage. Cue the recap riff. Johnny and Bob proved a rebel heartbeat pulses the same in Minnesota or Mississippi. Willie and Snoop inhaled shared oxygen and exhaled generational truce. Dolly and Stallone glitter-bombed genre snobbery. Loretta and Jack crowned coal dust with distortion pedals. Lionel and Kenny braided velvet into denim. George and Dennis painted cinema in honky-tonk hues. Hank Jr. and Kid Rock toasted pure anarchy. Merle and Keith distilled grit into royalty. Porter and James turned tailoring into theater. Charlie and Ted weaponized volume. Glenn and Alice traded birdies for backstage passes. Waylon and Ali fused rope-a-dope with rope-a-twang. Tammy and Burt rescued hearts and hounds. Reba and Whoopi weaponized sweaters. Chris and Steven taught the cosmos to hum. If you're piecing together a dream duet, steal courage from these stories. Send that reckless DM. Crash that writing session. Book that oddball co-headliner tour. Maybe you'll engineer a glorious train wreck, maybe a masterpiece. Either way, you'll fertilize the soil where tomorrow's soundscapes grow. We're nearly out of runway, but consider a secret encore. Picture Dolly stacking harmonies over a synthwave file Jack emailed at dawn. Imagine Snoop phoning Willie to debate quantum gravity after binge-watching a Kristofferson doc. Envision Whoopi introducing Reba to Stephen Colbert for a surprise banjo rant about airline peanuts. These moments haven't happened, yet. Future legends are scheduling themselves inside private DMs right now, and that, fellow wanderers, is why this jukebox keeps spinning. Every coin you drop could cue a combination nobody predicted. Hold your breath and trust the shuffle, because somewhere between track 8 and track 9, banjos might marry breakbeats, and you'll never hear Heartache the same. If these tales lit a spark, slap that like button like it owes you rent, lob your wildest pairing suggestions in the comments, and punch the bell so the algorithm remembers you exist. Next week, we'll uncover the secret genealogy linking cowboy yodels to techno rave whistles, so pack earplugs and curiosity. Until then, crank your strangest playlist, toast the horizon where neon meets starlight, and remember, the best jams happen when nobody worries about the label above the doorway. Goodbye, good luck, and keep your friendships weird. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.